Welcome to the Chase Challenge, week 26. This week begins and ends with God pursuing a relationship with people who come nowhere near meeting the criteria we've been discussing the last few weeks. Remember the criteria we've been using from 2 Chronicles 7:14, the words that God gave to Solomon when Solomon asked God to hear prayers. God said to Solomon, "If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, pray and seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear." Well, we've been looking at all of the kings of Judah and Israel and the prophets that have been speaking to them, and we have been evaluating them by this criteria. We've been examining their lives to see if they're wholly devoted to the Lord. And we've been asking ourselves as we've been reading, are they personally identifying with God? Are they pursuing Him, seeking Him, humbling themselves to show that they need God? Are they living their lives for His purposes and seeing their life as called to fulfill His purposes for their life? Or are they living for their own purposes? And finally, are they pushing back against the sin in their own lives and surrounding them? This was the criteria we have been using to evaluate the characters in our chronological Bible study to see, do they deserve to be heard by God? And frankly, if we look at every king, even the prophets, and we hold them up against this standard, it's very difficult to find someone who really measures up. Don't we just have something within us that just desires to find that one who is wholly devoted, the one that we can check off all the boxes and say, this is it. Here we have a good king. We have a good person. We have somebody that meets the criteria. We want to put these kings into a good or bad category. We really want to say, this was a good king of Judah. This was an evil king. This guy's good. This one's bad. But really, have we found that? We look at Jehoshaphat, who you would think, well, he's a godly king. You might put Jehoshaphat in the good category, but even he did not fully push back against the evil that he should have. He had an alliance with Ahab that led to his own son marrying the wicked daughter of Jezebel and Ahab. Then you have Jehu. He is destined to bring justice to the house of Ahab for all of the evil that they had brought into the land of Israel and Judah. And Jehu seems to fulfill the purposes that God has for him. But yet, even Jehu does not fully devote himself to the Lord. He does not turn from the sins that were introduced to Israel way back with their first king Jeroboam when the kingdom was divided. So you can't put Jehu in the good category. And then what about Joash? Joash was the only living descendant of Ahab. He had escaped. He had been rescued by his aunt Jehoshaphat and her husband, who was a priest at Solomon's temple. They kind of adopted Joash as a baby. They raised him and kept him hidden from the wicked queen Athaliah, who was Ahab and Jezebel's daughter. He grew up in the temple. He grew up with a priest as a father. And as long as the priest was alive, Joash followed the Lord and he did many great things. He repaired and restored the temple. But was he wholly devoted to the Lord? Did he meet all of the criteria? After Jehoiada, the priest, dies, Joash begins to drift and he is confronted by a prophet, a man that he probably grew up with, a biological son of Jehoiada and Jehoshaphat, the people who had raised him. I want you to look this week and see how he responds to Zedekiah, a man who was like a brother to him. he confronted him and tried to lead him back into the ways of the Lord. What did Joash do to Zedekiah? Can Joash be put into the good list? So if no one meets the criteria, no one is good enough to be heard by God, then why is he pursuing people that don't measure up to his own standard? Why is he chasing after people and trying to engage into a relationship with people who don't qualify, who don't measure up, who aren't seeking him, who aren't looking for him? Why? Why does he bother seeking after people who are unworthy, who aren't seeking after him? And how can he get their attention? What can he do to get them to chase after him as hard as he is chasing after them? Delve into this week's reading to get the answer to those questions and the answer to these questions. Number 1, Naaman. He is the captain of the Aramean army. The Arameans are one of the greatest threats to the land of Israel and even Judah a little bit later on. How did Naaman, the captain of the Aramean army, even find out about God? What led him to seek help? And who pointed him in the right direction? Was he looking for God? And did Naaman find God? By the end of this week's reading, we will see that an even greater threat to especially Israel and even Judah is not the nation of Aram, but the nation of Assyria. But believe it or not, God calls his prophet Jonah to the capital city of Assyria just years before Assyria captures Israel and deports the Israelites out of the promised land. Jonah doesn't want to go to Nineveh. He doesn't want to go to the capital of Assyria, but through a series of crazy and insane events, he ends up there and he tells Assyria what will happen. He warns the Assyrians in Nineveh, and they respond to Jonah's message. They respond to the warning, and God relents from the disaster that was coming. God chooses to pursue a relationship with the Assyrians by sending Jonah to warn them so that they can repent. They can turn from their ways and turn to God. Well, they do. The Assyrians living in the capital city of Nineveh repent. They listen to what Jonah has to say, and they turn from their pursuit of their other gods, and they turn to the pursuit of the God of Israel. But Jonah is furious. He's so mad. And Jonah bitterly tells God, I knew you would do this. I knew you would do this. I knew you would listen to them. I knew you would, because you are. And he tells God who he is. He reveals why God pursues and chases after those who are not chasing after him, who are not seeking him, and who do not measure up, who do not meet the criteria. You fill in the blank. You read it this week and you answer the question, why does God pursue and chase after those who don't deserve it, who don't measure up, who don't meet the criteria? Keep chasing after him, because he's chasing after you. And I'll see you next week.